Good morning and afternoon, everyone, and welcome to our live webinar today. I'm Greg Schmidt, coming to you from our offices here in Eden Prairie, Minnesota. I'll be the presenter for today's webinar titled, How to Get Started Replacing AFP Forms. If you are using an older forms technology, such as the IBM Advanced Function Printing, or other older outdated PCL or PostScript-based forms technology to generate business output, you're probably asking yourself if now is the time to start modernizing your forms generation process. With all the forms you currently have in production, you can't just throw away your existing technology. However, you need to start moving down a path to modern-day document production without ripping and replacing your old forms software all at once. In this webinar, I will provide an introduction to some common reasons why companies may want to eliminate AFP forms processes and why now might be the time to update your form software and consolidate your products under a single vendor such as HelpSystems. Again, my name is Greg Schmidt. I'm the Senior Technical Solutions Consultant for the Document and Forms Management brand here at HelpSystems. I've been with the Document and Forms Management brand for over 20 years now. I specialize in pre-sales demonstrations and proof of concepts, business process requirements gathering, pre-implementation design, and best practice guidance within organizations. Our journey today starts with a short discussion on the state of advanced function printing on the IBM I and some of the potential associated issues. I will also be talking about some reasons you may want to consider modernizing your forms output generation process. Next, I will provide some ideas on how to get started replacing your AFP forms in a planned and organized fashion. And I will also introduce you to our iForms business forms output generation software. Then I will provide a short technology demo on our iForms form design process, and I will show you some sample forms that you can get started with. I will end with a few minutes of Q&A to answer any questions you might have. Feel free to enter your questions in the chat window as I go, and I will address them towards the end of the webinar. Please select all presenters so all the questions are directed towards me. We'll also plan to complete the session in about 30 minutes, so you have plenty of time to make your next important meeting. Also, today's event is being recorded, and you'll receive a link after the webinar to share with anyone in your organization that could not attend. The nice thing about advanced function printing is that at some point in the past, your company has embraced moving from pre-printed forms to a nicer looking output. That is a great start. However, the moves by IBM in regards to the printing and AFP print management over the past several years and the need to improve forms processes and iterate changes faster make it time to consider updating your forms generation technology. Creating AFP forms is a painful process. Using AFP to design forms also takes special programming knowledge for creating forms overlays, page segments, and other elements needed to generate the new form. Not to mention that each form requires its own RPG program to generate the AFP output document for print or electronic distribution. AFP and IPDS printing also requires special printers or converter boxes to render the forms correctly on today's modern printers and multifunction print servers. Let's take a closer look at the problematic AFP forms design process. If you have used AFP or other green screen-based design tools, you know the forms design process can be very painful. AFP page overlays must typically be created using MS Word, Microsoft Paint, or some other document authoring tool. Then the Word document is printed and exported to an AFP print driver that can output a binary file containing the overlay object. After that, the AFP overlay object is manually converted to an overlay on the IBM I by uploading the file and running it through several manual steps, including the create overlay command. Finally, the overlay is printed using the RPG program on the IBM I. The printed output is then reviewed, and the process continues over and over until the form is just right. There are at least 5 to 6 steps involved when creating or updating an AFP overlay document. There are also several problems with this process. Forms design changes can't be quickly iterated and reviewed because of all the steps that are involved. Big one is custom RPG programming is required for each and every form. Forms with PCL or AFP-based overlays don't always render correctly to both printers and PDF documents. And often customers are using special AFP and IPDS printers or conversion boxes for printing, and they're very costly. If you know this pain, it might be time to replace your outdated electronic forms technology. As you'll see in our iForms demo today, the forms design and runtime process can be greatly simplified. AFP knowledge depletion is another issue. As many of the older generation of RPG developers move on to other roles or towards retirement, the new generation coming in to do the forms design work expects modern graphical tools. Having to teach a forms designer who comes from the visual development generation the golden rules of manual AFP programming is not an exercise that will bear long-term fruit or gains in productivity. And then the future lack of support for AFP. The good thing is that AFP support still exists in the operating system and won't be eliminated anytime soon that we can see. This means things like overlays, page segments likely will still work if you need to use the older AFP printing process. However, the handwriting is on the wall and it says it's time to modernize. Fortunately, we have a solution that can help you with this and your existing AFP process and also that process of moving forward. iForms is our option for forms process modernization and document creation. Let's talk a little bit about our iForms software and some things to look for in the AFP modernization technology. Today's form designers want the ability to be able to design and test on the fly before moving forms into production. With iForms, you can design, test, review, and deploy a new form from any one interface. This allows designers to eliminate all the manual steps it previously took with AFP to deploy and implement forms. With iForms, designers always render to PDF first, which means you never have issues with output format shifting because we render to final format of PDF and then distribute, archive, and print the original PDF. And also saving a new form version is as simple as saving a PC file from the designer to a network folder or an IFS folder. Or also you could use our built-in forms deployment plugin built into the iForms designer to move forms to your different environments. You can use any IBMI or PC change management software option as long as it supports storing PC objects. When we talk about implementing iForms in an existing AFP shop, they often have concerns about trying to do what's called a rip and replace of all the existing AFP forms. Fortunately, iForms can be incrementally implemented beside your existing AFP documents, so you don't have to do the big bang rollout and replace of existing forms. Let's talk about a few types of forms you can create with iForms. All businesses have the need to generate standard daily business forms and documents for output. With software such as iForms, forms design can be quickly created and can contain graphical elements such as static text, dynamic database fields, barcodes, images, and graphs. When using an existing spool file, you can also reach out to the database to pull in additional data fields that may not be in the original spool file. This is a nice way to add fields to a form without changing any data in the existing IBMI spool file data stream. If printing is required, documents can also be generated in black and white or full color formats to take advantage of today's available color printers. When you start moving away from using spool file documents as form data sources to use databases, you can build very dynamic structured documents such as orders, invoices, shipping documents, and more. A document can be built dynamically, much like the layers of a sandwich. First, add the page header, then add any detail lines, and as each detail line is output from the form, you may print the related comment lines that need to be placed under each detail line as the document progresses. As the core document data is output, footers and totals can be output, and then the process continues for each document that needs to be generated dynamically. And did I mention, no RPG programming is needed for this at all. Many businesses have the need to generate large quantities of letters, price books, policy change notifications, product modification notices, recall letters, and other documents for vendors, employees, and customers. Letters often need to be retained for audit and compliance purposes, so they may get manually filed or scanned. Often these letters are also generated via manual or semi-automated mail merge generation processes, taking lots of time away from more meaningful activities. Using a software solution such as iForms allows the generation of forms and letters to be integrated into your existing application processes or even application screens. Warehouses use our iForms application for mailings, shipping labels. It's sort of that hallmark of that business process there. So when they can send correspondence and stuff. Being able to generate letters on the fly from existing IBMI or other database input is a great way to satisfy your organization's need to create labels without needing to be that label expert. Labels can be dynamic text, images, barcodes to help meet your label production requirements. And the labels can be printed on any laser printer, zebra label printers, and any other format as needed. When you are ready to start considering replacing AFP and other forms production processes with iForms, the process is easy. Reach out to schedule a consultation to discuss your business requirements with us. Identify one or more of your own forms to start with, see a live demonstration, and work with us to determine where you want to start. Now I'm going to take a quick look at the iForms designer process with some sample IBMI spool files. So I'll show you how the mapping process works there. And then I'm going to go and show you how the bill of lading document is designed around that input file. And then if time allows here today, I also want to talk about how you can integrate your programs and stuff with CL and RPG programs with our native IBMI commands. Okay, let me get started here. Let me just minimize this. All right, so the first step of the process is to create the data file underneath the design process, right? So we need something to start with. We need some data to start with. So we have what we call our iForms text designer. What this allows you to do, it allows you to do a couple different things. The first thing, it allows you to browse output queues out on your IBMI to be able to find the spool file you want to be able to use as the input. When you download that from the output queue, it then loads into what we call the design mode or the mapping mode. This gives you the capability to map these fields So you can actually use the Add Field button up here to be able to map these fields, and you'll see these each of these fields have little maps over the top of them already. But what it allows you to do, it allows you to tell where the data is that you want to be able to pull on the form. And you see that we use symbolic names for those, so you can name them with whatever naming convention it is. I usually use the field naming conventions to be able to pull that over. So we do have that capability there to be able to do that, because you'll see this in just a few seconds here when we go into the design mode for the form, how these are pulled over into design mode. So this is a very simple process for spool file management, but just being able to browse for that spool file, map the data out from that spool file, and then what we do is we export it into the form design tool. So in this case here, I'll bring up the bill of lading here from a forms design standpoint, and this would be the iForms designer itself. And then those fields get mapped into the iForms designer so that you can drag and drop these different fields into the form wherever you need them. So it gives you that capability there to be able to do that. The iForms designer comes with a lot of different functionality you can do. There's some fine-tuning options you can do here, but the basics of it is being able to design forms. So you can design your different forms inside of here with using these different elements, so lines, boxes, shaded areas, graphs, charts, and all that good stuff inside of here, so you can lay out your form inside of here. We also have a plug-in option here too in our iForms server. There's what we call a trace option. So if you do have an existing form and you want to trace over the top of that form, we do have that option there. So if it's easy for you to design, you can use what we call that trace option to bring that form in as a background image, so you can trace over the top of it to be able to process that information in there. But it's very simple to be able to do that here. Static text can be put in place, logos, dynamic logos can be put in place. So if you have multiple locations you're shipping from, we can look at the data, like a zip code or something like that, and actually put different logos on the documents too, so it's very dynamic from that standpoint. Barcode capability inside of here, so you can do barcodes, you can do QR codes. If you do barcodes, you can click on the area. You can change the different styles of barcodes, so you do have that capability there as well. I'm going to run one of these here so you can see what it looks like from an output. So for testing this, it's as simple as hitting the button here, this little execute button up on top. The little execute button is going to execute that command, and it's going to launch the sample up with that sample data that was from either a spool file or a database. So as you see here, this will pop open here with that sample. So testing is very simple. One button click, you can test it and view it and see what that BOL run looks like in this case. So very easy to be able to test and do different things like that. Now, from other sample standpoint, you can do like shipping labels. So you can do, like I was talking about in the demonstration or in the presentation, you can do shipping labels and different things like that. You can also do, invoice runs. So if you have to do invoices, you can guide your invoices. We can also do checks inside the system as well. So that's another one. One of the ones that comes up a lot, especially for correspondence and output of documents, we have the capability to do letter generation too. Letter generation is pretty easy from that standpoint. A lot easier than doing mail merges and stuff like that, like a lot of companies are doing. But mail merges are just basically putting your, letter generation is basically just putting your logos, and this one has a little underlay symbol underneath it, and then you can create that, and I'll show you what the output looks like here. Makes it a nice, clean format here, and very, like I said, very simple to do. So we can take spool files or data-driven processes to be able to create these different kinds of documents themselves. We can do database-driven forms as well. So if it is a database-driven form, we can. There is a database wizard inside of here, so you can connect to different data sources, and then just as simple as mapping the form out with the forms designer, we can write select statements inside of here, and then we can do. And then you'd map these fields into there from that standpoint. So we have a full visual editor for databases as well. Any fine tuning of the form can be done on each of the properties. So you can right click and do properties and put expressions and do different things inside of there. So if there's any fine tuning of the form, or if some part of the form is spool file driven, you have other forms, we can also, or other data that needs to be in the form, we can also drive that from a database standpoint. So there's multiple ways to be able to do that. One of the last things, just really quickly, I want to show this before I go into the Q&A. So we do have native commands. So the iForms product does run native Windows and runs native iSeries. It runs mixed mode as well, so native, so it can run in between Windows and the IBM i. We do have commands that you can run inside of here as well and embed into your processes. So one is like what we call the IFM exec command. This would be for form merges. And then we also have an assembly process. So if you're assembling documents together into one PDF, we do have the IFM ASM command that you can run as well. So, and these are all just command driven inside of here. So you can actually interact with this from your applications, or put direct applications screens if you want to, or into your CL or RPG programs. So you do have a couple options there from that standpoint. All right, here I am going to switch back over here to some questions. All right, feel free to keep entering those questions while I review the results here. And if I don't get to all these questions today, and I probably won't, looks like there's quite a few of them, I will be following up after the presentation here today to get them answered. So let me just go through here really quick. Lots of questions, means everybody is listening and paying attention. That's good. All right, take my first question here. If all my data isn't in my IBM spool file, can I grab the information from a database and use it on the same form? Yeah, so some of these questions came in before I actually went into a live demonstration and explained that. But yes, a form template can be based on a spool file or a text file, and it can also draw in additional information from a database table as needed. So, and then you can, and vice versa. All right, another question. How would I generate documents from databases other than DB2? In the designer, you can specify any database that is available as long as it has a database driver available. iForms can use it. Simply specify the driver of your choice and then create the SQL statement to grab the data that is needed for the document. So that's a pretty common thing there that we run into. All right, next one. Can I filter pages from a spool file or records from a database during forms generation? The answer to that is yes. You can use soft-coded form parameters to drive filtering within the database query. When you're selecting pages from a spool file for processing, you can also use our report splitter product before to do the pre-processing or bursting of the document. So there's a couple options you have there. All right, I'm going to take one from the beginning here because this is a good question, and I did answer this already, but can I print barcodes? The answer is absolutely. Hard-coded, soft-coded barcode values are supported for easy integration with, for being able to place those barcodes on the documents. And this is one, I'll just answer really quickly here because we did cover this. Can you build labels with iForms? The answer is yes. Pretty much any type of label, including zebra labels and printers and stuff like that. But yes, you can. All right, for time's sake here and get you out of here early, I'm going to take one more question. This is a good one, actually. Can we include one signature on checks under 1,000 and then two signatures on checks over 1,000? The answer is yes. This can be done using the form scripting logic. So a lot of times it's, the value-based kind of structure. We can interrogate the total and say, okay, this total's over 1,000. So we can put sort of a what we call business rule structure in there to be able to look at that and then be able to add that signature or first signature or second signature on there if you need to. All right, there's still a lot of great questions out there that I'm not going to get to. Okay, we didn't get to your question today. We'll be following up with you after the webinar here shortly. I just want to thank everyone for attending today's webinar. I hope you've learned some helpful information to allow your company to go down that path of removing AFP forms and generating high-quality customer documents. If you have any additional questions, feel free to reach out to our sales team and me. And we'll be happy to schedule a free consultation or a live one-on-one demonstration to address any of those questions. You also receive a link after this webinar so that you can share the webinar with anyone in your company that could not attend today's session. Thanks again for attending today's webinar, and have a great rest of your day and the rest of your week.